one of the members of Parliament who will be there and listening intently to the Prime Minister is Michael Fabricant, the Conservative MP for Lichfield. Michael, thank you for joining me this morning. First of all, you were at that 1922 committee meeting last night. What did you make of what the Prime Minister said?
Well, as ever, he was very, very enthusiastic. He's enthusiastic about the deal. And what was interesting was that the audience, the MPs, were enthusiastic about the deal as well. It was actually very well received. But I hate using cliches, but the cliche, of course, is the devil will be in the detail. And the meeting we had with the Prime Minister was at 5 o'clock. Then I had a meeting at 6 o'clock with the ERG, of which I'm a member. There's about 100 members of the ERG. And they're going to take their time, as will the DUP, in analysing all the ramifications of the deal, because it is a very, very complex deal. And the lawyers were saying it will take at least 2 weeks to come to a conclusion.
That's a really interesting point, because of course we don't have a time frame on any sort of parliamentary vote. We've sort of had the deal in the public domain for just under 48 hours. Are you suggesting the ERG's own time frame there is probably 2 weeks before we will hear a definitive conclusion?
Well, Bill Cash chairs the Committee of Lawyers, and I specifically asked him how long it would take to come to a conclusion. And his answer to me was it would take 2 weeks. And I think that's now been broadly publicised in the press. So 2 weeks, at least, actually, is what he said. I hope it won't take quite as long. Of course, we've had some very interesting reports in the newspapers today, in the Telegraph and the Times and others, looking at the EU statement about the agreement, comparing it with the British government statement. And I think that will focus minds. Will VAT be totally in the hands of the British government? Will state aid be totally in the hands of the British government as far as Northern Ireland? These are issues which will have to be investigated.
Certainly, lots and lots of detail to go through. I believe 16 individual documents published by the British government on Monday, hundreds of pages,
I've got them on the
legal
side of my
text.
desk.
You've got the command paper there in your hand. I have to say, Michael Fabricant, have you read the command paper? And frankly, will your colleagues be reading every letter within that command paper?
I've read some of it, but I've got constituency work to do as well. So I'm delegating it rather, as I think many MPs will do, to the lawyers of the ERG and journalists like you, who will have a team of people going through it and analysing where there are differences, if there are differences, between what the Prime Minister has said and what the lawyers think will be the difference with what the actual legal situation is.
Now, of course, the big story that is dominating many headlines this morning are these leaked WhatsApp messages from the former Health Secretary. I suppose it's almost inevitable there will be questions on this in Prime Minister's questions. Michael Fabricant, you were a big supporter of the government during that time, 2020, 2021. What's your takeaway from these headlines and these messages this morning?
Well, they certainly are headlines. I mean, it rather reminds me of when the Telegraph leaked all those years ago the expense claims, which led to a huge scandal. I don't think, though, that this is quite like that. First of all, some of the WhatsApp messages are taken out of context. I mean, I used to WhatsApp the health secretary regarding these various matters as well during COVID and things that affected me, that is to say my constituency in Lichfield, and he was very, very good at responding. But the decisions were not made by WhatsApp, which is what Labour will be trying to portray. The decisions were made by Cabinet and by the committees which are subject to Cabinet control. So, let's just wait and see precisely how this goes. I think what it does demonstrate is we need to get this national inquiry into COVID underway sooner rather than later. Otherwise, there's just going to be constant speculation. Of course, what I would say is I do think that Hancock was rather naive to release all his messages to a journalist. And in fact, we're being constantly told by the House of Commons authorities about foreign actors in Russia, Iran, and elsewhere trying to hack into our mobile phones. So to actually give your mobile phone to a journalist who was known to be hostile to lockdown strikes me as being rather reckless.
Do you think this might be something that the Information Commissioner should start to investigate, whether Matt Hancock's handling of his own personal, private, confidential data that might well have national security implications perhaps, was done in a proper way?
Well, I think the Information Commissioner is already considering it, if I'm honest with you. I'll leave it to him, or is it a her? I'm not sure who it is, to decide.
It certainly used to be a her. I'm not sure if it's changed in the last 6 months or so. But Michael Fabricant, for now, thank you so much for joining us here on The Briefing. We always appreciate your thoughts on those two big issues. But